Alright, so based on what happened in the latest chapter of Boruto, it appears that Mitsuki is not an Otsutsuki. So that theory itself is done, gone, kaput. Mitsuki is not an Otsutsuki. Now of course the reason why this is confirmed to not be the case is because Mitsuki was affected by Ada's powers in chapter 74 of Boruto. Now of course you might be wondering, why does this confirm that Mitsuki is not an Otsutsuki? Well, that's because, as explained in prior chapters, Ada's attraction ability doesn't work on Otsutsuki members or even people with Otsutsuki DNA, for example Boruto and Kawaki, who are part Otsutsuki. So if Mitsuki was indeed part Otsutsuki, if his DNA was taken from an Otsutsuki member to fashion up his body, then he shouldn't have been affected by Ada's attraction ability, yet he was. So what does this mean for Mitsuki's character? Well, one thing could mean that Mitsuki is not part Otsutsuki. You know, it could mean that Mitsuki is just like a regular genetic human being created by Orochimaru with amazing powers. We don't know where they came from, but they're pretty amazing. But this could also be the writers trying to trick the audience. Now this could be for multiple reasons, or this could be explained in multiple ways. It could be that Mitsuki is in fact part Otsutsuki, and it could be that he wasn't affected by Ada's ability. It could be that he just pretended to be affected. And this is very important because Mitsuki does have powers that he's hiding from Team 7. It took a long time for him to even use his sage powers before them so that they can know that he has this ability. So it could be that Mitsuki is aware of the fact that he was created using Otsutsuki genetics, and it could be that he's keeping this from the villagers as instructed by Orochimaru. So it could be that Mitsuki just pretended to be affected because he was in the meeting where it was explained that Boruto and Kawaki are not affected because they're part Otsutsuki. So he would acknowledge that him being part Otsutsuki, he wouldn't be affected as well, and he would be the only one aside from Boruto and Kawaki who are not affected, which would lead to suspicion about him being part Otsutsuki or whatever. So Mitsuki, being a very smart dude, because he's very smart, would think that, okay cool, if Ada does show up, I'm gonna pretend to be affected by this ability because this would put a smoke screen over my entire creation or the backstory behind my creation. And I think that's a pretty cool way for the writers to kind of not confirm the theory as yet, for us to be surprised in the future, and to also show that Mitsuki's character is very smart and strategic, and he's hiding something for some reason. Now, why is Mitsuki hiding that he's an Otsutsuki? Why is Orochimaru hiding this fact? I have no idea, because I'm not sure if they would have a problem with Mitsuki being created using the genetics of the Otsutsuki per se. I might see a problem there with the other Kages, or maybe even Shikamaru, but I don't see Naruto per se having a problem with this fact. But I do see it as some sort of security threat in some sense, because you're going to use the genetics of an alien being that came down and tried to destroy the entire planet to create another being that might be influenced by that genetics, because we don't know exactly how that would work out, and I think they might have some problems with it. Now of course genetic splicing and sharing DNA and all that jazz isn't something new to Naruto, because they're like Oprah with Hashirama cells. They're just giving it out to everyone. You get an Hashirama cell, you get an Hashirama cell, you get an Hashirama cell. They're just giving it to people, right? And people have multiple Hashirama cell limbs and so on, even Naruto himself. So I don't see sharing DNA as a problem, but when it's shared from the Otsutsuki, I see where they might have a problem with, and I see why Orochimaru would hide that fact. But I also have a theory that Mitsuki was created using the genetics of the Ten-Tails, which isn't exactly the genetics of an Otsutsuki, unless that Ten-Tails ate an Otsutsuki. So I might see some way where Mitsuki would have Otsutsuki DNA in that sense, but maybe not so much to the point that it would reject Ada's ability. And this is the other theory I have. It could be that Mitsuki is part Otsutsuki but not full Otsutsuki. Well, I mean, that's kind of the opposite. So maybe he's not full Otsutsuki, maybe he's part Otsutsuki, and this is the reason why he's affected. Because you have to remember, Boruto is 100% Otsutsuki, even though that entire thing was kind of questionable. He is 100% Otsutsuki at this point in time. And the funny thing is that Code referred to Kawaki as being 100% Otsutsuki as well. So these two characters who are 100% immune to Ada's abilities are indicated or implied to be 100% Otsutsuki. Now the funny thing about this is, if we go back to the chapter where Code actually released Ada and they're having this conversation about the entire plan and stuff, Ada explained that her abilities doesn't work on Otsutsuki members. Now Code kind of inferred that it might not work on Kawaki since he's part Otsutsuki. He was 80% at that time. But what we have to take into account is that Code wasn't 100% sure. He said that it may work on Kawaki, or it may not work on Kawaki because he's not 100% Otsutsuki. So there was this question about whether Kawaki would have been immune to Ada's abilities since he was just part Otsutsuki and not 100% Otsutsuki. Now if we go back to Mitsuki, Mitsuki isn't 100% Otsutsuki, or we can assume that he isn't. He's made up of other genetics and all that jazz. So let's say Mitsuki is 80% Otsutsuki, 40% or 60%, right? He isn't 100% Otsutsuki, which should explain why he would be affected by Ada's abilities. They could explain that as why that's the case, but Mitsuki still being part Otsutsuki, thus being part Toneri Otsutsuki, or part whatever Otsutsuki they use to create Mitsuki. So while I originally said in the beginning of this video that this theory is done, gone, kaput, I don't necessarily think that's the case. But I do think that's going to be the general sentiment when everyone reads this chapter. But as I said, this could be the writers trying to misdirect the audience, kind of mislead us into thinking that Mitsuki isn't Otsutsuki while he is, you know? And the funny thing about the Toneri thing is that Toneri himself isn't really a full Otsutsuki. Like, he isn't really Otsutsuki himself. Like, maybe he has some Otsutsuki DNA, but Toneri is like a watered down version of an Otsutsuki. He isn't like full-blooded Otsutsuki or even half-blooded Otsutsuki, because like Hagoromo was like half-blooded Otsutsuki, and so was Hamura. Toneri is a descendant of Hamura, so Toneri wouldn't even be half an Otsutsuki. He's like a watered down like 25%, maybe 35% at max, you know? So Toneri himself isn't really a full-blooded Otsutsuki, so using his like watered down genetics to like make Mitsuki wouldn't make Mitsuki a pure-blooded Otsutsuki like Boruto, who is now a pure Otsutsuki per Momoshiki, you know? So that's why I say that it's very interesting how the Toneri theory itself works out, whereas, you know, he can still be Toneri's offspring or still be created using Toneri's DNA, but that doesn't mean that he has to be full Otsutsuki because Toneri himself wasn't full Otsutsuki. So all in all, this video was to just like brush over that theory itself, to like give my thoughts on it, to say that okay, cool, this might still be the case. So don't, you know, don't like cry and make up noise or, oh, you know, they set this thing up and now they're like, you know, changing their minds and, you know, like calm down, you know. It might still work out. It might still work out that Mitsuki is part of Otsutsuki. I might see some cool abilities from him. Now, I hope that it isn't the Toneri thing, although, you know, Toneri can be mixed in, but I think it's really more interesting if he was created using the genetics of the Ten Tails. And it would make more sense because Orochimaru has access to the Ten Tails genetics. It's all over Earth, you know. Naruto and Sasuke kinda chopped up the Ten Tails into little itty pieces, and they're all over the planet because they fought the Ten Tails in the war. Orochimaru, all he had to do was go to the war battlefield and he would find some semblance of the Ten Tails to gather DNA from. So I think that's more possible than getting DNA from Toneri when Toneri didn't fight on Earth like at all. Like the Toneri that fought Naruto was just like a puppet and shit. The real Toneri fought Naruto on the moon and he got packed on the moon and he never came back to Earth. So it's kind of weird to say that Orochimaru would just get DNA from Toneri, you know? But all in all, I think it's very interesting how this chapter is going to play out. I have some more things to talk about. We're going to do like the chapter review itself. I'm actually recording this video before the chapter comes out because we got this information from the spoilers themselves. So, you know, let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section. I don't know when this video is going to come out, probably after the chapter review if I'm being honest. But, you know, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop a like if you like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.